my great loves is to stand up in front of folks and tell stories, philosophize, make you laugh. Not that I was ever anything much to look at. A Wisconsin man once said to me, after attending one of my speeches, that I did not appeal to the ear or the eye. All my life, I had two trains running through my mind like a tune. I worked mainly farm jobs with my father Tom and other farmers. When Mr. James Gentry at Gentry's store asked me to help his son Alan pilot a boat down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers to New Orleans, I said yes. Right away, a chance to see the world, meet all manner of people, hear all kinds of stories. Frontier schooling was always once in a blue moon. Some reading, some writing, some figuring. My father said, that's all the education you need. Well, that's about all the feller got. At New Orleans, I set off on my own to see the city. Oh, people from every which and where, speaking every language in the world, it seemed to me. Wearing every type of get-up in the colors of the rainbow. Spice, mead, and fiddle, and bands or music on every street. What a wonderful country I live in, I said to myself.
Hey guys and gals, it's your buddy Drew from Living History's Mysteries. You know, here of late, I have done my best to bring you guys the apex of history. And I even tried going back and speaking to General Washington himself straight from the horse's mouth. Today we're going to try it again. But this time, we're going to go and visit probably one of the most memorable presidents of our history. We're going to do it a little different though. You know, try to make everybody happy. Let's go. can't leave this sitting here. This thing's going to raise a lot of questions in 1865. Let's go see if President Lincoln's home, shall we? Mr. President, first off, I would love to thank you for meeting with us right here in the library in the White House. I know you're a busy man, but I'd like to hear some of your stories. I hear you were a storyteller, and growing up in Indiana myself, I love a good story. The floor is yours, Mr. President.
Welcome. As you may know, I set aside several hours every week to visit with people. Anyone from anywhere who wants to drop by. I like to know what people are thinking, or feeling, and if there's anything I can do to help, or any problems I can solve. Sometimes people want to complain about something I said or did. Sometimes they want to thank me for doing my job. I call these sessions my public opinion beds. Well, anybody can come by, you know. It's important for me to know what real people think, not just Congress or the newspapers. I am the president of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the people are always welcome here. They get to know me, and I get to know them. One of the things they know about me is that I like to tell stories. Sometimes it's easier to explain a complicated thing by telling a simple story. And that's what I'm going to do now. But you probably know me because of the Gettysburg Address or the Emancipation Proclamation. Everybody's heard of the Emancipation Proclamation, which announced our intention to do away with slavery in this country. But there's another proclamation you might not know about. It's Proclamation number 106, and it was issued on the 3rd of October of 1863. And it announced that Thanksgiving Day will be celebrated in this country as a national holiday. I signed that proclamation, and I had the Great Seal of the United States stamped on it. But to be honest, I cannot take all the credit. I did not invent Thanksgiving. Although I am an inventor, most people don't know that I am the only president who holds a patent for an invention. I invented this. Now, I bet you can't guess what it is, so I'll tell you. This is my device, my system for refloating boats that have got stuck on sandbars in rivers. In my younger days, I worked on a cargo boat on the Mississippi River, and if you got stuck on a sandbar, you were going to be there for days until it rained enough to raise the water level and float your boat. So these poles, you see, they were used to pump up airbags on the side of the boat to raise it up and then let it float free. But nobody ever built one, so I never found out whether it would work or not. But you can still see the model over at the patent office if you're curious. Now, you may ask yourself, what does this story have to do with Thanksgiving? Well, absolutely nothing. But I wanted to make it clear that I don't go around taking credit for other people's ideas. And the idea for Thanksgiving is very old. It goes back centuries in different countries, celebrating things like military victories, the birth of the royal baby, or the end of an epidemic. It's been celebrated in different places at different times for different reasons. The early Spanish settlers in Fort Augustine, Florida, well, they celebrated a Thanksgiving in 1565. There are reports of Thanksgiving celebration in Virginia in 1619. And of course, the famous Pilgrim Thanksgiving was celebrated up in Massachusetts in 1621. Now, harvest festivals have been celebrated all over the world ever since people started growing their own food. I grew up on a small farm in Indiana, and everything we ate, we either grew ourselves or we found growing in the woods. We fished for fish in the streams. The men hunted wild game in the forests. The folks kept pigs for ham and bacon and sausage, or a cow for milk, cheese, and butter. There were also chickens for eggs, and if one of the chickens stopped laying eggs, there'd be fried chicken and chicken soup. When the harvest was bountiful in the fall, the folks would get together and have a little harvest festival. There'd be plenty to eat, and somebody always brought along a fiddle so that the young folks could sing and dance. But as time went by, some people wished there was a particular day, the same day every year, to celebrate Thanksgiving for all the things that life has given us. Now, one of the people who had that idea was a young lady named Sarah Josepha Hale. Sarah Josepha Hale. Ever heard of her? Well, you should, and for good reason. And one of those reasons is, you may find this surprising. Everybody knows my Gettysburg Address. And they know that it starts out 77 years ago, but most people can't recite much further than that. Sarah Josepha Hale wrote something that everybody knows, including yourselves, and it goes, Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. It followed her to school one day, which was against the rule. It made the children laugh and play to see a lamb at school. Now, Sarah wrote that when she was a young school teacher. One of her students, a girl named Mary, came to school one day, followed by her pet lamb. And Sarah wrote a poem about it. Now, Sarah Josepha Hale was born in New Hampshire in 1788. Just about a year before President George Washington declared a day of Thanksgiving to celebrate our new nation. Her father had fought in the Continental Army with George Washington, and both her parents believed in equal education for boys and girls. And though Sarah was mostly educated at home, she became a school teacher. She married a young man, a lawyer, named David Hale, and together they had 5 children, 3 boys, 2 girls, before David died, when Sarah was only 34. While raising her children, she became an author. She published a book of poetry and a novel called Northwood, which was one of the first books to explain slavery in this country. Now, that book was an immediate success, and Sarah was invited to move to Boston to edit the Ladies' Magazine. And so she did for 8 years. In her spare time, she started a foundation to provide help for the families of sailors who've been lost at sea. Having lost her own husband, she sympathized with young widows with children to raise. She also raised money to build the Bunker Hill Monument and to help repair George Washington's Mount Vernon, which was in sad shape by then, and she helped found Vassar College. Well, one day, a magazine publisher in Philadelphia was so eager to have her work for him that he bought the Ladies' Magazine, lock, stock, and barrel, just so she could be his editor. And so she was. For the next 40 years, she made Godey's Ladies' Book the most popular, successful, and influential magazine in the country. Now, in 1846, she began her campaign for a National Thanksgiving Day. She wrote the President, President Taylor, President Fillmore, President Pierce, President Buchanan, and got no results. Then she wrote to me. To Abraham Lincoln, Sir, permit me as editress of the Ladies' Book to request a few minutes of your precious time while laying before you a subject of deep interest to myself and, as I trust, even to the President of our Republic. This subject is to have the day of our annual Thanksgiving made a national and fixed Union festival. Well, in 1863, we were engaged in a great civil war. very, very large battles were being fought to put an end to slavery and make sure that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Anyone would think that I was too busy trying to keep the country going to concern myself with a new idea for a national holiday. But having just achieved great victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg, it began to look as if the tide was turning, and maybe the end of the war wasn't so far away. And I thought maybe people needed a special day to remember all the good things we were fighting for, and how to appreciate the idea of what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. That's a good line. I'm probably going to use that. Well, at the time, I was too busy writing my Gettysburg Address, so I asked my Secretary of State, William Seward, to write the proclamation for me to sign. Now, Secretary Seward is a fine man and a great writer, and he produced a very moving and uplifting document that I was proud to sign my name to. That was October the 3rd, 1863. And on November the 26th, just 7 days after I delivered the Gettysburg Address, the first National Thanksgiving Day was celebrated. Now, how you celebrate Thanksgiving probably depends on the customs where you live. Now, Sarah Josepha Hale, in her book, talks about a Thanksgiving memory of a celebration in her house when she was a child. It featured roast turkey, red dressing, winter squash, boiled potatoes and onions, buttermilk biscuits with fresh churned butter, cranberry relish, ginger cake with whipped cream, coffee, tea, and raspberry shrub, which is a kind of fruit punch. Now, my wife, she grew up on a very, very fancy mansion in Kentucky, and liked to tell me of the big parties they would have with every kind of treat you can imagine. Then I would tell her about the time my family sat down to give thanks for a humble meal of boiled potatoes. Rich or poor, feast or famine, people celebrated. Some folks stayed in church most of the day. Some folks had a quiet celebration at home. Some folks traveled to meet relatives. Over the river and through the wood to grandfather's house we go. The horse knows the way to carry the sleigh through the white and drifted snow. Over the river and through the wood to grandfather's house away. We would not stop for dawn or top, for 'tis Thanksgiving Day. Over the river and through the wood, oh how the wind does blow. It stings the toes and bites the nose as over the ground we go. Over the river and through the wood and straight through the barnyard gate. We seem to go extremely slow. It is so hard to wait. Over the river and through the wood. When grandmother sees us come, she will say, "Oh dear, the children are here. Bring a pie for everyone." Over the river and through the wood, now grandmother's cap I spy. Hurrah for the fun. Is the pudding done? Hurrah for the pumpkin pie. Now, that poem was written by another great woman, Lydia Maria Child. And like Sarah Josepha Hale, she was an author, a teacher, a poet, a crusader against slavery, and she published a magazine for young folks for 8 years until public opposition to her stand on slavery caused circulation to drop, and she was forced to cancel the magazine. She continued to write poems and novels and wrote a very useful book called The Frugal Housewife, which offered recipes and advice on how to run a household on a limited budget. My wife Mary made good use of that book when she left her wealthy Kentucky home to come and marry me, a poor young lawyer just starting out in Springfield. She used that book to cook up some very satisfying and simple meals. Now, of course, we live in the president's house. We have a great big kitchen and a whole staff to come up with all sorts of sumptuous meals for great state occasions, and important dignitaries visiting from all over the world. Mary feels right at home with those fancy parties. But I sometimes miss those old-fashioned hoedowns we used to have in Indiana when I was a boy and didn't have a care in the world. And I know we've all been through some tough times. But no matter how things may seem, there's always a great deal to be thankful for. As another author, Cecile Frances Alexander, wrote, "All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful. Let us be thankful for them all.